This is Concepts, where two pretentious sirs quibble over ideas that explain today's world. Phil Shea and Steve Rose. My name is Phil Shea. I am writing for makeaskillcheck.com, and you can find more writing by me at hittingeject.com.
My name is Steve Rose, and you can find more about me at steverosephd.com, where I write about mental health and addiction.
Welcome to Pros and Concepts.
Welcome.
All right, so today, Steve,
Back.
take the lead. Steve's taking charge this time. He's wrestled me to the ground, and I have to give him the reins. So, Steve, how about you lead us here?
Yes, I've pried the reins out of your hands.
My cold, dead hands.
Yes, you refuse to give up control, as usual.
Exactly. The disease for center control.
Yes.
Which is a reference that nobody's going to get to do with chess. Never mind. Let's move on. Okay, so what are we talking about today, Steve?
So we're talking about limbic capitalism today. What are your thoughts?
I mean, some of my thoughts. I think people may be wondering, what do we mean by limbic? This is a concept that's been kind of floating around more recently, and it seemed very much in line with your area of expertise, yeah?
Yeah, and so when we use the word limbic, we're talking about the brain's kind of emotion centers. There's a lot of things that happen in the limbic system, but broadly speaking, it's kind of the emotional part of the brain as opposed to the rational part of the brain. And we're talking about how capitalism, or kind of corporations that operate in a capitalist economy, have a profit motive to be able to extract as much value as possible so they can feed their need for ever-increasing profits. And therefore, not only do they need to extract more materials, more value out of their labor, they need to extract more value from their customers. And so they target our limbic system to manipulate us into spending more time engaged with their products. And we're talking a lot about digital products today because that's just a really efficient way to do it. But basically, how corporations make us addicted to them so that they can get as much money as possible. How's that?
Broadly good. I think that's where the whole subscription model is kind of part of it, but it's more than just that, because people are listening maybe wondering like which specific aspects. We're talking like how it's kind of more like a casino. I think one point that was brought up was, say, with any sort of social media, including email, how you can pull it down like a slot machine and then let go, and then it'll repopulate with new stuff, and it'll give you possibly a hit of dopamine.
Yep.
Because either you got new messages or it's got a post that's actually interesting, but it's going to be something that's going to engage you emotionally,
right,
and give you a hit of some sort of emotional response, which tends to resonate with us and make us come back for more.
Yeah, and we see this in social media, we see this in gambling, we see this in fast food, that companies are just trying to make their stuff as engaging as possible. And we hear that word a lot now. Engagement rates, time on device. Marketers are using not just click-through rates, but for YouTube, watch time is kind of how they also measure which videos to promote. So it's a metric of how long can we keep people in front of our stuff. And the easiest way to do that is targeting the emotional part of our brain, our emotional centers, the limbic system, to be able to extract as much value as possible. And, this is not anything new. We see a lot more in the last few years. With AI, it's going to be getting a lot better predictive models. But this stuff goes back to the beginning of capitalism, really. And we're taking a lot of what we're talking about today from the book, Age of Addiction. It's by David T. Courtwright, written in 2019.
Published in 2019.
Facts. So the subtitle of the book is How Bad Habits Become Big Business. I love subtitles. They kind of explain the book better than the main title.
It's all marketing and clickbait, right? We're basically even that level.
Yeah, the age of addiction, it kind of gets your attention, and then the subtitle tells you what it's actually about. Kind of like the difference between the thumbnail of a YouTube video and the title of a YouTube video. It's this very similar construct. But David T. Courtwright wrote this great book. We highly recommend it. We have some quibbles near the end of it, which we can debate and talk about and try to clarify.
Did you actually want to do that? We got ChatGPT to make a debate between Karl Marx and the author of that book, which actually it surprisingly came up with some interesting takes that, it highlighted at least one good point that I thought. So anyway, we can possibly enact that.
Yes, we'll get a fictitious debate between Karl Marx and David T. Courtwright. But okay, so Age of Addiction, he's saying kind of something is special about our age that is here now that wasn't here as much before. What is this special sauce of our Age of Addiction?
Well, what I took away from it was basically algorithmic and AI, well, whatever we call AI, based ways and means of figuring out the sweet spot for us. Say we've, because of this episode, we've looked a lot into like the gambling stuff. And I think a lot of our habits and emotions are easily hijacked in ways that are subtle and make it seem like it's not a big deal. If you were to say back in like the 90s, talking about how violent film or like making crass comments about women have real world effects, people would say, right, it's just a movie, man, relax. But when we actually look at the effects of these things, it does ingrain certain behaviors and encourage the likelihood of them happening. And I think what he's pointing at is that AI and big data stuff allows us to extract exactly how maybe individuals or groups are most likely to be hooked. For example, when we talked about slot machines, and to me it was bizarre because it was talking about skill. And you're pulling a lever. I don't understand the skill base. But if you don't give enough wins, then people get frustrated and it's too difficult, I guess, and they leave. But if you give too many, then it's too easy and it's boring and they don't get into the zone, something that I only recently learned about, which apparently you took for granted that everyone knows about.
Right.
But a lot of people want to get in this sweet spot, and they basically have kind of dialed it into an exact science of how often they need to pay out to keep somebody there as long as possible without disrupting their flow state, which is another thing we can talk about, the dark side of flow.
Yeah. First off, there's no skill in slots. I don't know what you're referencing there.
This was another addiction/gambling expert, and she was, I think, just talking about games in general, perhaps.
Oh, games in general, yes. I think you're referring to Natasha, I don't know how to pronounce her last name, Schull. There's 2 dots above the U. She wrote a book published in 2014. Not written in, but published in 2014. It's called Addiction by Design. And she goes into Vegas slot machines particularly and how they are so scientifically constructed to put us into what she calls the ludic loop. Do you remember the ludic loop?
Oh, I mean, Ludo has to do with games. So they're just talking about game loops, basically, which is part of game design broadly.
Yeah, she says there's 4 components of the ludic loop: solitude, fast feedback, random rewards, and continuity without resolution. If you think of a slot machine, it has all of this. Solitude. You're doing it in a very isolated way. They design these casinos to feel along the main path, which kind of swerves and basically gently brings you into the gaming floor.
Yeah, no right turns, no decisions being made, just glide you along.
Yeah, right turns mean you have to make a decision. The swerving paths are more to the limbic system of not having to make a rational decision. You just go with the flow. But when you go into a slot machine, it's not in this kind of mainstream pathway. To go into a slot machine, you have to go off of that and you go into some more quieter area, kind of nestled in. You're by yourself. You feel kind of like cozy. You feel kind of anonymous. Having kind of worked personally within a casino myself for several years, wandering around for countless hours, you get the feeling when you're in the slot machines that it's this kind of cozy place away on your own. So there's that solitude component, a little nest. There's the intermittent rewards part of that. So they give you just enough rewards to feel like you're winning. And I think this is where it's analogous to a sense of skill, because in skill-based games, to get you into a flow state, it needs to be hard, but not too hard. The analogy for a slot machine would be it has to give you enough wins to keep you going, but not 0 wins where you get bored. So it has this kind of random rewards, but just enough to keep you going, not too much where they can still extract money in the long term from you.
I do find that there was 2 points that she made that stood out to me. One was that they will give you wins, but wins that are less than you've put in. So you're in the negative still, but it'll at least make you feel like you're doing something, you're getting ahead. You're being rewarded despite actually still being in the red. But the other part was that she talked about how slot machine people who tend towards slot machines tend to be doing it for an escape, to just go into the zone. This is where the dark side of flow is, because they get into a flow state of just hitting the thing and continuing to play. And they actually get annoyed when they win because there's big noise, there's an interruption. They might have to wait for somebody to come and fill their machine to give them the actual payout that they're owed. And overall, it disrupts the cozy. It almost seems like they're on painkillers, kind of like the way that it's described. Like you feel nothing, you're just super zoned in and you forget yourself. And you just are in this, I think the hug of the pink cloud is what they called it for painkillers, but it seems like that, but for casinos.
Exactly. The slot machines are the opium of the casino. Table games are the cocaine of the casino. So generally speaking, there's these 2 kind of categories of gambling: action-focused gambling, which is more fast-paced table games, kind of higher jackpots. You're kind of chasing this high, the thrill of that. But the escape gambling is more so this kind of anesthetizing, more like a penny slot, for example. You're just sitting there tapping it for hours on end, going into this trance-like state where you forget about your real-world problems, that disappears. You may even forget about your body and any kind of pain that you have, chronic pain. You just get right into this zone where actually a big win is very disruptive to that.
Right. It jars you out of it.
Yeah. Not only do you have all this attention now put onto you, but you have people having to come out and hand pay you a bunch of cash. Now, some people like gambling for that exact reason, the sense of importance, specialness, the action of it. So some people actually do chase gambling for that reason, but many people don't. And it's kind of the side of gambling that we don't often talk about or realize is actually happening as well, and is most analogous to the way we are addicted to our phones. Mm-hmm. We're not sitting there like thrill-based, like, this game is great, whoa. It's really a lot more of this like droning kind of or scrolling kind of behavior.
Well, think about when people pull out their phones, though. It's usually when you're in an awkward situation or you're just bored and you can't, it's just a state that you don't want to be in, and you're kind of escaping that a lot of the time. These days, when hanging out with people, I try to avoid pulling out my phone as much as possible, and I try to put it on Do Not Disturb mode. A lot of these people, they thought they were making things more useful. Like the guy who invented the infinite scroll, he regrets it because it became this whole thing, like where it becomes more addictive. You just keep scrolling and scrolling, and then hopefully something's going to hit in the way that your brain wants. And I think one of the functions they were suggesting was if you put smartphones on top of one another, they will detect each other and automatically go to Do Not Disturb mode. That would be a good innovation that we could use for this.
Yeah, designing pro-social features into products rather than designing them to be as addictive as possible.
Which brings us immediately back to the concept at hand. Why would they ever do this? They do not want us doing that. They would prefer us to be as crack cocaine addicted to our phones as what they could possibly do, like vapes, right?
Yes. The profit motive really hangs in the bounds of why would a corporation do a pro-social thing unless it gives it a reputation that makes it more money. That's one way to do it. But is being pro-social going to affect the bottom line? Yes or no? That's the only decision that a corporation has to balance.
Which is why I always find it funny that, this is off topic to a fair bit, but it's just that the right wing I hear will scream about how there's ideological capture of, say, Hollywood or, Walmart because they have like an LGBTQ display. How can you possibly see these behaviors and believe them to be genuine? It's purely for profit. If they had Nazi paraphernalia there because it was accepted widely and they would make more money from it, at least enough to counterbalance any backlash from it, they would do it. There's nothing stopping them.
Exactly.
As they say, the last capitalist will sell you the rope to hang him with, or them with, which is true. There's no ideology. The ideologies they espouse are just selling an idea to the customers so that they can hopefully make more money.
Right. And capitalists will even defend that.
Yeah.
They will even say...
It's not a secret, yeah. It's not a conspiracy theory. This is literally what they do.
Yeah. People who are like pro-capitalists are like, well, that's what they're there for. They play within the rules to make profit for the shareholders. This is what people expect them to... this is what people expect them to do.
They're amoral, right?
Amoral.
Doesn't mean immoral, to differentiate. Although I would argue they're almost the same in practice. But amoral means, they have no morals whatsoever, so they'll do anything, which...
Right. They're psychopaths.
Yeah. Morality doesn't come into it. It's just, do I get my goal or do I not? Which in the book, Age of Addiction, they do point out that free markets tend towards bad outcomes that are antisocial. Because say you're peddling cocaine back when it was legal, back when it was like this miracle drug, and you know full well, like tobacco industry did, that it's fully addictive. You'll deny that as long as possible. You'll give out free samples. You'll say, oh, this is actually good for your health. It's toasted, so it's good for you. And they'll do all these slogans knowing full well that if they get you to start, you will not stop. You will most likely be a lifelong addict for this. And so that's where the free market takes us, where if it's profitable, especially if you can get somebody hooked indefinitely, they're going to do it unless we regulate against it.
Right. And then when you say free market, you're talking about extreme laissez-faire capitalism, zero restriction.
That's what free markets are. Yes. Yeah. There's no regulation at all. The market just self-regulates and people will vote with their dollars. That's a fantasy that economists have come up with.
Vote with our dollars as if we are complete rational actors. I mean, there's a presupposition that we are just that. Homo economicus,
Exactly. Econs is another term. They said that humans are infinitely rational and will always make the best choice, which implies that we have both the time and freedom to do that and are eminently rational. No, we're not. We are not.
No, working in the addiction field, the first thing you have to understand is that we are not rational. And nobody wakes up one day and decides, I just want to develop a massive addiction to something. It's an emotional journey. to it. And the way these products are designed, it's a really an unfair thing to just say, well, you made a poor decision. These are bad gamblers.
Yeah, so I had a debate with a friend. He will probably listen to this, so hello. You know who you are. We were debating the problem right now with what we talked about last episode, sports betting. And I think he thought I was saying, because I was saying I now relate weirdly, especially since I'm an atheist and I railed against the church for a long time, some of the temperance movements and some of their perspectives on things.
Yes.
I understand where they're coming from. I don't agree. And I think he thought I was saying that we should completely ban all of this. But I'm not saying that. I'm saying there should be regulatory stuff to stop, say, putting it in front of the most impressionable people there are and pushing it on them as much as possible. In the book, it talks about the temperance movement. And even they knew that you couldn't completely outlaw it because it would just make it worse.
Right.
You instead have to make it a safer, more acceptable form of it and use the profits for pro-social things. Canada kind of does do that, Ontario at least, for casinos. And alcohol and marijuana.
The thing I found interesting about that book that I never really thought of a whole lot in the past was we think of temperance movements as kind of religious, killjoy, puritanical, kind of just like, don't do anything bad,
Don't enjoy life.
Don't enjoy, this very Puritan value thing. There's various factions of the temperance movement, or he calls it anti-vice activism. And a big section of it was actually a socialist critique of capitalism.
Yeah, that was interesting.
How temperance is a capitalist critique, because what you're doing is critiquing this kind of indefinite free market that can be highly predatory because its only driving force is it profitable or is it not? And you're kind of in advocating for more regulation or government ownership over certain things, which is public ownership, then you are critiquing laissez-faire capitalism. And so it's interesting how temperance can be capitalist critique.
Yeah, because I guess even the food industry went the same route. Limbic capitalism, if we want to take that, they had to figure out, we had enough food, we have enough food, and we're throwing it away. And instead, we have the food industry basically pressured the governments to subsidize certain things that were more likely to be used in more broad things and saying that they were going to be helping feed the population. We don't have to worry about that anymore. But like corn, for instance, is heavily subsidized and it's used for the most addictive things we can do. It's not healthy for us. We basically just know it's the most efficient way for us to make carbs and deliver it to you as quickly as possible. And then they can refine that down to high fructose corn syrup or stuff that as soon as it hits your gut, it's like a drug, will give you a quick reaction. And I think one of the other interesting things in that book was pointing out that in the part of the brain with somebody with an addiction problem of any sort, if they are shown a symbol of that addiction, then they will have that part of the brain activate. And so a food addict, which people would balk at sometimes, when shown a milkshake, had the same reaction as an alcoholic seeing a beer. The same part of the brain goes off. So it is actually, it is still there. It's still real.
It's a brain disease as it's classified in the medical model. There's some critiques of the medical model. But you can't debate this. The brain scans show what they show. It actually alters the brain. And whether it's food or gambling or drugs or alcohol is basically drugs. Well, we just call it something different. We just call it something different.
Because it's legal. It's not illicit. It's fine.
It's all the same when it comes down to it. And so it hijacks our brain in these emotional centers that we are not rational actors to begin with, but in addiction, we're especially not. So the basic, let's say you're basically thriving, good mental health, no addictions, you have strong discipline, eat right, exercise, you are still not a rational actor.
No.
Because of our psychology. And Jonathan Haidt talks a lot about this. He says, if emotions are the president, reason is the press secretary. Emotions, being the president, makes the executive orders. And the press secretary, being the reason, justifies it after the fact.
That's what we're doing? Okay, well, these reasons make sense, I guess.
Right. And so for gambling, you feel the emotional pull to do it. Something's triggered. You see something pops up. You get an email for an all-night casino. Click into it. The emotion's driving you. The reason is now saying like, oh, maybe just this time. Oh, maybe I'll just make a few dollars. Maybe I'll stop when I'm ahead. Maybe this time it's different. Your reason is doing all after the fact, getting in front of the cameras and saying, we're okay here, we're good. The emotion is really what's driving that, especially in addiction. But even if you're not addicted, we are very much not rational actors to begin with. Our emotions play so much of what drives us in our human behavior.
Well, in our environment, priming is something that we haven't done as an episode. It just seems so basic that we should. I mean, it's curse of knowledge. But I'll give an example of priming, which is subconscious influences on behavior by prior stimulus exposures. You're shown something and it makes you more likely to do something else. So the study I'm thinking of, it's been a while. I think it was in my undergrad when I read about it. But they had two groups that would go into the lab, and they had to do word jumbles. So there was just like words that are jumbled up and you have to figure out what the word is. And in the one case, it was just random words to do with, I don't know, laundry or just anything you could possibly think of. And the other one was all focused on being things that we associate with being old. So like Florida, oranges, aging, wrinkles, stuff like that. And so the real test, they told them it was the speed at which they could de-jumble these jumbles. And what they were actually doing was they had a long corridor that you had to walk in and walk out of the lab. And they were recording the time it took you to go through. So the speed at which you traveled through this hallway. And so they have the baseline, which is you going in. And then on the control group, which is just the random words, them going out, they went out at basically the same pace. But the group that was assigned to the old age concepts, they walked more slowly, which it makes sense because if you're around old people, you can't move fast and with force because you could end up killing them or hurting them at least. So we tend to move slower in those situations. And the thing is, they didn't know that they did that. And if you ask them why they did, which they also did, they will, proper term is confabulate. They'll make something up. They'll come up with a rational reason that makes sense. But they weren't thinking about it at the time. And in fact, they probably didn't know they did it. And so that's the subtle ways in which we are not really in control of ourselves. It sounds weird, but I remember somebody saying that when you talk, you are also listening to yourself because you'll say stuff that you didn't know you were going to say, or you'll reveal parts of your subconscious that you, if you're paying attention, you can get hints at, because we're kind of just operating a lot of the time, especially when it comes to conversations we're not fully engaged with. If you know what I'm talking about. I don't know if this makes any sense.
We are on autopilot most of the time.
Yeah. Which, I mean, if we had the concept on awesomeness or we did the concept on shitification, I could have brought up both those things a couple times already. But what we could talk about now is pathological learning, if you want.
We could.
Because it seems relevant.
Yeah. The concept of learning is interesting because when people first hear that, maybe they think of being in school. You think of sitting at a desk, looking at a chalkboard. When we use the word learning and we talk about deep psychological learning, it's not that at all. It's not this rational kind of 1 + 1 = 2. And now you've learned something. You've learned how to do math. Most of what's relevant to human behavior is learned emotionally.
Yeah, operant conditioning, I guess.
Yes.
This is why in the book he talks about how most substances are found in nature, but gambling isn't. And I'm like, what is he talking about? All of nature is kind of like a gambling thing. If you're going out and foraging and stuff, do you find something? Do you get killed? Do you come back as a champion? What happens?
Yes.
It's random and it can be a huge reward or it can be hugely punishing. But remember, okay, one of the times that we went out to the club long ago, do you remember? It was the first and only time. Somebody I've never met before, just buying them a drink. I don't like that approach. I feel like you're buying their time.
I remember this.
Yeah. And so this girl basically said, buy me a drink. And in my like early 20 mind, I was like, okay, I guess I should do that. And so I waited in line. I bought her a drink. She took it, immediately turned and walked away. And I was like, all right, I'm not doing that again.
I got a nice bird's eye view of that scene.
Yeah, you were upstairs watching me do it, looking over the banister.
Yeah.
So that was, for example, that's like a way that I was taught, at least in that context, that this doesn't work. This is what we were talking about gambling last episode. If it had gone spectacularly, like she just immediately fell in love with me and we really hit it off, then I might think, oh, buying drinks is the solution. But
yes, you would have been positively reinforced if we use the language of operant conditioning.
Yeah.
We learn through feeling. So that feeling of rejection in that moment taught you never do that again. Whether you were conscious of it or not is irrelevant. But every time you probably thought of buying a drink or somebody asked that question, there was something in you that revolted, that was like, ugh.
Yeah, the more negative the punishment, the more prevalent. Actually, that's not true in terms of like legislation and crime, I think. But like for individuals, if I tried doing a trick and then I broke my leg, then I'm probably not going to try doing that trick again. But if I just simply like scraped my knee, then I might get up and try again immediately.
Right. I guess when we're talking about crime and punitive measures.
Probably because it's so divorced, it's not immediate, and it's the severity going through the system and all that, it's so split off from the actual act that it's not really good at teaching.
There's a whole neglect of the underlying things that led to that as well.
True, yeah.
Because I would even have a critique of Skinner that he's too shallow when it comes to these topics.
Yes.
That it's very much about, immediate kind of feedback, reward circuitry. But when it comes to things like crime, we're looking at now, is this person kind of impoverished situation? Is there past trauma that led to substance use that led to crime to get substances?
In other words, criminogenic behaviors or situations.
Yeah. And so when we talk about punishment in the criminal system, it's just a very divorced thing from the underlying issue.
Yeah, I guess the best metaphor I can think of is like somebody walking with crutches because their leg is broken and you slap the crutches away and say, stop that. You shouldn't be using crutches. And they're like, but I need the crutches.
Right. So I could see how you questioned operant conditioning when it came to that topic. But to the topic at hand, though, early big wins in gambling is like one of the biggest predictors of getting a gambling addiction. I literally talk to people every day and I ask, were there early big wins? Yes. And they implicitly learned that gambling is a way to get money, is a way to feel important, is a way to acquire status. And whether or not it's continuing to happen is almost irrelevant because that emotional imprint was baked into that early experience that's still operating subconsciously. And we have to do some deeper work to rewire that.
And relatedly, one of the other things that was pointed out in that book was that the earlier you try psychoactive substances, the more likely you will have some problem in the future, which is the same sort of thing, right? Like you've taught really deep in your brain before it's fully baked, which is usually said to be around 25. If you've taught yourself at, say, 13 that drinking is fun and good, and it also probably is integrally tied with sex to some degree, especially at that age, then you will probably have associations that are going to be harder to shake as you get older because the foundation has been laid so early on that it's going to be built into the structure to a greater degree, is how I would view it. But I don't know if the science actually would say that.
No, this is true. And then when I was talking to someone just the other day about their drinking, some people drink to escape. Some people drink for a thrill and for fun. I always try to figure out, where is this coming from? Is it kind of more on the slot machine opioid side of things, or is it more on the kind of the table games action side of things? And we got to the conclusion that it was more about good times, this kind of implicit association of drinking equals good times, even though it wasn't actually leading to them. For years, it was leading to bad times consistently. But when we looked at the earliest experiences of what alcohol meant in the family, as early as 4 years old, there's memories of family and parents drinking. Parties meant everyone was together. It was good times. And there's an implicit striving to get back to that when things felt like they were falling apart. And so things get baked into our memory that we just don't even really stay in touch with. And we then get into an autopilot of striving for something that is unattainable.
Are you familiar with rosy retrospection? Basically, rose-tinted glasses for the past.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, I guess politics is always kind of in the background, but that was pointing out how that's kind of the core of a lot of conservatism, where they want to get back to a good time. They want to get back, especially these days when things are getting worse and worse, I guess. But when you look back at the past and you forget the bad parts and you have this rosy retrospection going on, you're trying to get back to that. And I think that's the core of a lot of behaviors that may not be adaptive. Instead of viewing the current context and the information we currently have and how we have to move forward, a lot of people would rather say that time was better. Let's just force time travel to the past, even though it's impossible. You can't step into the same river twice. So it's interesting how this is just like at the core of our brains, I think, and our emotional centers, that time was good. So if we just recreate that time, we'll have those same feelings, right? And none of the negatives.
Yeah, and to think we're rational actors because, we have all of these cognitive biases in our lives. You could probably pull up a list of like cognitive biases, use GPT, and just a ton of them. And the more you learn about how the brain works, how our human behavior works, the more appreciation you have for how little our reason plays a role in so much.
That's actually a good hook. I asked ChatGPT to give me the most concise definition.
Okay, what is it?
Okay, pathological learning is when someone learns something in a way that's not good for them. It's like when you touch a hot stove and learn not to touch it again. But in this case, the learning makes you scared of or worried too much. For example, if someone gets really scared by a dog, they might be afraid of all dogs after that, even nice ones. This kind of learning can make people do things over and over, like washing their hands a lot, or be really scared of something because of a bad thing that happened before. It's learning that ends up being not helpful.
There we go. I like that.
Also, if you ever do this, you want to give it a word limit because even that was a bit long. It was 100 words.
It was a bit long, yes. But AI is so powerful. We could take these very complex ideas and then break it down so simply.
But I think the problem that I always point out is you have to be an expert in the area you're talking about, or else you won't know that it's misleading you, because it just comes up with ways to explain something where it may not be true at all. So you got to really be careful of the things you're not aware of. Yeah, so that's pathological learning. It's learning that is dysfunctional.
Like learning gambling is profitable.
Yeah, that would be pathological.
It's not true that gambling is profitable in the long term because there's a house edge. But in that moment, your brain learned that it was profitable in that early big win. Learning doesn't mean truth. And I think we often confabulate truth and learning because the educational system is like, here's the true knowledge that we are going to impart in these receptacle students. And really, when we talk about behavioral learning or behavioral economics and how the brain works, learning is not based in truth. It's just based in our experiences with our emotions in our situations.
Yeah, we're not built to see reality as it is. We're built to navigate the world in a way that will allow us to survive and procreate. There's no need for us to see objective reality, or else our eyes would see much wider on the wavelengths and our hearing would be much more attuned. There's no need for it, so we haven't adapted those things.
Yeah. Personal takeaways for you in learning about all this, because I've been in the addiction field for a long time, and it's nice to have you getting into this because you point out things. I'm like, oh yeah, I never thought about that because I know it, but curse of knowledge, never really think about it or realize that it's not common knowledge. What are some kind of things that you've been reflecting on?
At the risk of sounding like a killjoy or somebody that is more puritanical, which is certainly not me. Anybody that really knows me, I guess you've been listening to this podcast, you know I'm not very religious or conservative by any metric. Yeah.
You're the opposite of a killjoy.
Yeah, but I guess I am careful about things that I allow myself to be exposed to, because what if you really do like it to a pathological level? What if you can't get the same level of satisfaction from whatever it is you're doing unless you have these added layers onto it? Or what if you're training yourself to need something in order to even just have base enjoyment, and without it you are just in pain? So like obviously the most common thing that might come to mind is caffeine, for instance. If you need to have caffeine to be able to make it through the day, if you don't have it, you're at a negative. And so I'm starting to wonder and look at these things, because it's like he even made an argument, this is hyper puritanical, he made an argument for swearing, because swearing does actually give you a small hit in the brain of reward because you're doing something transgressive, and it actually has been shown to decrease the amount of emotional reaction to pain. I think it was, it raises your pain tolerance, swearing, and it, by being transgressive in this way, you get a small hit. And so it is something that can be slightly habit forming, and if you try to stop swearing, especially if you don't have kids, like whenever I visit you, I have to catch myself to not swear. It's very difficult because it's just so baked in. You could argue it's just turn of phrase or whatever, but other things, I think, especially when you try to stop and you have a very hard time doing it, that's something to be careful of. In the past, in my early 20s, I was a lot more careful about doing these things. Okay, do I want to invite that in because it could become habit forming or something that I need to have a good time? Mm-hmm. Or like during the pandemic, I used a lot of pot, and I still kind of do now, that it was a signal of this is the end of the day, you are now relaxing, is what it kind of signifies, but it shouldn't be necessary for that. So taking stock of those things and realizing you're doing it is important, because you can easily fall trapped to these negative behaviors. In China, I did something similar where I was coming home from work and there were these corner shops basically in every apartment. And so I'd stop, and on the hot days I would get an ice cream because it was only like $1. And then I realized that I was basically doing it every day. So I was like, I got to stop this because I'm having way too much sugar at this point. And sugar, like food, it's been so drugified that as soon as it hits you, you get like a rush from it. Refined sugar is a problematic form of natural processes, because when you eat, say, fruit, it's got sugar, yes, but it's in the food matrices that make it less harmful. It slows it down, the digestion of it. It doesn't just immediately hit your bloodstream and give you this rush. Whereas now it's basically like comparing snorting caffeine pills versus drinking tea. The natural form is fine, but when it comes to drugs, it's about concentration. And with, say, these behavioral things we're talking about, with algorithms and software, we've basically made it as concentrated as we possibly can for one of the things that is most addictive or most desirable for us, socializing, right?
Yes. You know where I see this the most, actually, and it's biased because of my line of work.
Gambling.
Watching sports.
Oh, well, as the last episode we talked about, that's a very, these days, almost inextricably combined with betting.
Yeah. When you think of watching sports, it's an exciting, action-packed, high-level thing in general.
Communal, too.
Yeah. You add gambling on top of that, it puts everything it already is on steroids. And it's like, you're watching it on Coke or something. I don't know. It really heightens the thrill and experience of it. So when people try to go back to watching sports without betting on it, it feels boring. It feels dull, unengaging.
Right.
They don't even want to watch it. And so that's kind of an example of exactly what you're talking about. It ramps you up to this super stimulation.
Yes, exactly. Super stimuli. That's what I'm thinking when hearing that is sex, for example. There's a huge problem with porn addiction and young men having problems performing because the real thing is not comparing to what they have access on their phones at all times.
Yeah.
Like apparently teenage boys in class are constantly looking at porn if they have access to their phones, to the point that I think it was in that book? They're distracting people who are giving presentations by showing porn on their phone and flashing it to the people giving directions. And then the girls were saying like they don't like it, but if they complain about it or anything, they'll just be ridiculed and ostracized by the boys. So it's not a good turn. We can say that at least. But I mean, even that has made me reconsider those sorts of behaviors. Like, is that affecting me negatively? Ideally, we should be able to enjoy life as it is without needing to add extra layers of enhancement, right? Like they should be nice to haves.
Right.
actually, during the pandemic, I started viewing sugar as a drug that should be like drinking. And biologically, they actually are processed very similarly. Like you end up getting insulin spikes from them, I believe, because alcohol just ends up becoming sugar basically. But if you view it that way, then having a lot of ice cream sitting by yourself is as bad as basically binge drinking that night. And if we view it that way, we'll have a healthier relationship to sugar because you can easily become more and more desensitized and addicted to the sugar itself. So likewise, I guess, I don't know how you would relate that with porn. Like you would watch it only with your partner. But I think another reason that this is affecting men more is because it's going to be more visual stimuli, whereas women, while they do watch porn, a lot of them seem to be more about like erotic fiction, which helps enhance your own faculties, your own mental state. Like it's giving you imagination. You're still having to do some work. It's not just a shoot fed directly to you.
Yeah. So in general, be aware of where super stimuli are hooking you. And it might not be obvious, like in action-oriented things like sports. It could be basic things like scrolling through a social media feed and how long you're doing that and how these platforms are designed to not have you make decisions, like the infinite scroll and auto scroll, auto play. If you've ever been on TikTok, and I've told you this before, it's designed in the most addictive way that I can even imagine. As soon as you get on their website, there's something there auto playing. And for some reason, they're able to immediately, even if you've never used it before, somehow hack into your cookies and actually start playing things designed for you right off the bat, immediately, auto playing, and try to like make a decision to go away from that. And it's not like super obvious. It's, if you've never been on it, at least it's not like super intuitive where you just click somewhere else and now you're away.
No, it's hard to get away because I think it automatically will scroll it upwards, play the next video. And if you don't like the video, you just scroll again. And so it rapidly learns which ones you stay on longer because it has all those metrics and it's exploiting them as much as possible. I thought it was going to be more like a problem for teens and stuff, but then I've been meeting adult men saying that their entire day, they could just be on TikTok the entire time. And I personally would rather do things like video games are probably more my hook, I guess, because those can even be problematic, because especially if you're trying to escape how I think video games are particularly appealing for a lot of people in a similar fashion, but you get progress. You get the feeling of progress moving towards a goal, more competency, even if it's just the character improving. And that gives the semblance of like, if say your career is stalling out or you're looking for work, because like looking for work these days is really depressing. You hear nothing back or you hear rejections, very few interviews and very few offers, even fewer offers. And as a result, it's easy for people to escape to video games because we have these readily available things that can make you feel like you're getting the thing that if the system was more healthy, we would be getting from other areas.
Oh, that's huge. The sense of competence, leveling up mastery, and even connectedness with others through the games or NPCs, for example, non-player characters.
Do you remember that definition of meaning I gave you recently?
No.
Oh, damn.
It had something to do with purpose. Video games do give you purpose. If you define purpose as just a general kind of direction, it doesn't give you higher purpose, meaning a direction connected to something bigger than yourself, but it does certainly give you a mission in the sense that you can go towards something or level up towards something in the dopamine release associated with that. So it's really a false meaning or an illusion of meaning to compensate for not having it in other areas.
So I found it. It's coherence, purpose, and significance. So coherence being like the ability to make sense of one's life and the world around them. Purpose is having a sense of direction and goals in life. And significance is the feeling that one's life has value and worth. Those three things are how we find meaning. And I think a lot of us aren't able to make sense of the world. And if you do have goals, it's often constantly being frustrated every step you take, a lot of time of moving towards it. So, and then finally, I guess significance. Do we feel that our lives have value besides the fact that we don't want to die? A lot of us are feeling like I'm just putting in time to make money to do what?
Put in time to make money, to be able to put in time.
Yeah, it's like drive his car to what is it?
Going to work to pay for this car.
Yeah, go to work to pay for this car. That's it. Yeah. And in that, because our jobs are so alienating and atomized, like Marx would talk about, we are alienated from the fruits of our labor. So the work itself is unfulfilling and often feels like, what are you contributing overall to society? You just made this app that is just extracting wealth from people. You're going to have a ton of money. But what did you actually do? Not much. Did you actually contribute to humanity in any way? Not really. You extracted value. You were rent seeking in some degree.
I think even people who think they hate Marx and are really kind of more...
They aren't familiar with Marx.
That's why I said think they hate Marx. Should look at Marx's definition of alienation, because even if you are a capitalist, you could probably get on board with his definition of alienation. It's hugely connected to economics, but you can agree with it while trying to support a capitalist solution to it. Marx would say that's impossible.
Do you want me to define it? I asked you to do it at a fifth grade level at 50 words or less.
Yeah, go for it.
Marx's idea of alienation is like when you have a beautiful drawing, but then somebody takes it away and you don't get to share it or enjoy it anymore. He thought workers in factories felt sad because they make things but didn't own them or see how they helped people.
I think that it brought it down a little too simple. Try 12th grade.
10th grade.
10th grade, okay.
Marx's concept of alienation describes how workers feel disconnected and unsatisfied because they don't own what they make or control their work. It's like doing a group project but having no say in it and not feeling proud of the final product. He believed this happens a lot in factory-based jobs where workers just do one small part and never see the whole picture.
That's better. See, that's an appropriate level of simplification right there. And that's what you have to kind of know these concepts in order to use the AI because they can make it too simple.
Yeah.
But I think that's the sweet spot right there. That's a really good definition.
It's like craftsmanship of any sort. I enjoy cooking, and when people I try it and it turns out well and it looks good and people like it, that is rewarding. But imagine I'm making these delicious meals and then they're just whisked away and I never get to see anybody appreciate it, like a cook, basically, landlord cook. You are making something and it's good, but do you feel like you're contributing to society? You don't get to see anybody's enjoyment. Say it's even removed, like you can't physically see anybody. It's just, you're just making this thing without other people. You're just chopping the carrots, for instance, like it's so atomized that you didn't even make the whole dish.
Yeah, Fordist production mechanisms or McDonaldization is another sociological concept for this.
Is the next step, yeah.
Basically, more complex versions of Marx's alienation. And we might take for granted, like, well, of course, we each do a little part of something bigger. That's just how it works.
The Toyota method differently, actually. I think they were doing the follow it through, follow it along. I don't remember. That might be misremembering, but some factories used to do that, and I think still may. But it's hard to compete because you're driving prices down by having people so alienated.
Yes. And that is why we posed a debate between Karl Marx and David Courtwright, because David Courtwright is more on this reform side of the spectrum where he thinks, okay, we can have good capitalism and bad capitalism. He says limbic capitalism is capitalism's evil twin, and he tries to separate the two. And when we were reading that, we were thinking like, wait a minute, I don't think these are two separate things. I think this is a natural progression of what capitalism has to do to maintain the need for ever increasing profits. I don't think it's something distinct and different. I think it's baked into the whole economic model of capitalism.
Yeah.
And so we posed a debate. What would Karl Marx say to debate David Courtwright's definition of splitting these apart? And
just on that point, before we move on, I think a lot of people will do that. They'll say, this is not capitalism, this is crony capitalism, or this is limbic capitalism, because they're trying to save capitalism. But the thing is, they always end up in these areas. When somebody starts getting an edge, or even like a guild or whatever, they get enough money to buy politicians, which then perverts the system, and it's not a regulated market anymore. Even Smith talked about having to have well-regulated markets or else it all goes to shit. That's what the whole game Monopoly is about. But yes, it's just bizarre that he made that distinction. I guess you could argue that he's just saying it's the dark side of it. The dark twin makes it seem like he's making it a separate entity altogether.
Separate entity, yeah. You can still believe in capitalist economies while critiquing capitalism, so this doesn't automatically put us into some kind of socialistic box. Like David Courtwright is critiquing capitalism, but ultimately he wants a better capitalism.
He wants a better system.
We just need to tamper the excess.
Sure.
Like that's the last line of his book is be cautious of excess.
But that's silly though, as we can see from this thing, because inevitably capitalism is a beast that constantly rails against its restraints in every metric it can, and then ends up being the lord of everything else.
It's all about excess.
Yeah, they become such a huge monster that nothing can stop it at that point. But ironically, some of them are actually operating kind of like almost communistic.
You're talking about corporations in a capitalist system, yeah.
Yeah, many corporations are more powerful than companies.
Countries, yeah.
Than countries these days because of just how much they can move around the world and how much clout they have money-wise.
Right, yes. So he's trying to say we need to moderate ourselves in this economy that tends toward excess. And what he would argue is that we just need better legislation, better rules that kind of stop things like advertising of vices.
Especially the children or teens.
Perfect. Yes, I'm on board with that. But questioning what is the actual incentive for a corporation to do this besides these regulatory measures? Because ultimately they're going to try to find a way around them or create new ways to exploit us,
Or funding, changing that legislation to allow it to be done again. In the States, we have a resurgence of child labor, basically. We've had to literally spill blood to fight back the system and get the beast back in the cage. And then we got convinced by like Reaganomics and Milton Friedman and them to basically get rid of all regulations. And now the beast is well and out of the cage again and ruling everything. And again, the system is so short-lived if you think about it. It's been one generation that they got it kind of under control. And then suddenly it's already everything's completely completely out of whack again. And as if it's by design, really.
The whole profit motive, it creates a situation where now they're lobbying politicians to change the regulation to allow them to expand more. So it really is a hard thing to get in a box here. This beast, this kind of...
It's hard to get in the box, and it's near impossible to keep in the box. That's the problem.
Exactly. And the temperance movement took how many decades to be able to get small legislation changes, and then how quickly it was undone throughout the 80s especially.
I'm not sure I want to necessarily sing the praises of the temperance movement, but even just a 40-hour work week, getting rid of child labor, having benefits, having pensions. These are things that we were taking for granted, and then now they're...
Right.
Where are they? The 40-hour work week, if you can get a 40-hour job, you're already lucky. And then if you have that, you're probably not going to get a pension. You probably won't be there for life. And probably you're working more than 40 hours. So go to Marx.
Yes, which creates alienation, and now we need vices to escape from. And then the companies that are kind of making us feel alienated are happy to sell us the solution. They'll cause the problem in many ways, having us feel kind of very disconnected, discontented, and then say, here's some beer and slots and gambling and TikTok to make you feel better.
Pleasure Island, basically.
Yeah, there you go. So they'll cause the problem and then sell us back the solution. And that's why we were critiquing David Courtwright's kind of way of going about this without considering more of what the socialist critiques would offer. And Karl Marx would pose, we can't just try to get this thing in a box. We need to overhaul the whole system. Now, that might be a longer term solution. I agree with kind of more reform in the short term.
Classic liberal.
More systemic changes in the long term. Classic liberal. Did you want to pull up that debate real quick? Maybe we can end on...
I have it up, actually. Did you want to be Marx or Courtwright? I'll be Marx.
Okay.
For those who are wondering, the prompt I gave was David T. Courtwright has been drinking in a friendly way at the pub with his good friend Karl Marx. Karl says something ambiguous about Dave's wife sending the amorous exchange on a downward spiral. This is how the debate starts over Dave's concept of limbic capitalism being base capitalism's evil twin. And so I told to write me 1,000 words of dialogue between these two characters, starting in the middle of their argument. So Marx, I guess I'll be Marx. I'm not doing an accent. He is the author of Age of Addiction, Courtwright. So he starts with Marx saying, but David, your notion of limbic capitalism, it's merely a shadow of the true beast. It's still capitalism at its core, exploiting the proletariat.
Karl, I think you're missing the point. Limbic capitalism is not about exploitation of labor. It's about exploiting our very biology, our desires, our pleasures. It's a whole new level of manipulation.
Manipulation, yes, but the foundation is the same. The bourgeoisie still owns the means of production, whether they're producing steel or smartphone apps that exploit our dopamine systems.
That's it, Karl. The means of production now include the production of experiences, emotions, addiction. Limbic capitalism isn't just about tangible goods. It's about crafting experiences that tap into our basic human urges.
But the exploitation of the worker remains central. Without the labor to create these experiences, your limbic capitalists have nothing.
True, but there's a subtlety here. The workers themselves become not just creators, but also consumers, addicts of the very things they produce. This self-feeding cycle is what makes limbic capitalism particularly pernicious.
Yet, the solution remains the same. The overthrow of the bourgeoisie, the end of private ownership of the means of production.
But how do you overthrow a system that's so deeply ingrained in human psychology? That's where limbic capitalism is more insidious. It's not just about who owns the factories. It's about who controls the dopamine.
Control of the dopamine, as you put it, is still controlled by the ruling class. The problem and the solution are fundamentally unchanged.
I'm not so sure. The control you speak of in classical capitalism is overt, tangible. Limbic capitalism's control is covert. It's about guiding choices, desires, even thoughts.
You make it sound as if this is a new phenomenon. The ruling class has always sought to control the thoughts and desires of the masses. Religion, nationalism, consumerism, these are all tools of control.
Yes, but the efficacy and the effectiveness of this control have reached unprecedented levels. Think about social media, online shopping, digital entertainment, Marx. From the 19th century.
Yeah, you should obviously know about these things.
They're designed to be addictive, to keep us engaged in spending.
The opium of the people has merely changed form, David. The essence remains. Distract and exploit.
But Karl, don't you see? The distraction is more pervasive. It's more intimately woven into the fabric of daily life. It's not just about diverting attention. It's about reshaping desires and perceptions.
I could see that the methods have evolved, but the underlying class struggle, the need for a proletariat revolution, these are as relevant as ever.
A revolution, yes, but not just in the economic or political sense. We need a revolution in how we understand and interact with our own minds and desires. We must recognize how they are being hijacked.
And yet this recognition alone is insufficient. The proletariat must seize control, not just of their minds, but of the means by which their minds are being manipulated.
So we agree to an extent. The fight against limbic capitalism is both a psychological battle and a class struggle.
Indeed. But let us not forget the importance of solidarity, organization, and political action in the struggle. Without these, understanding limbic capitalism is just an academic exercise.
I couldn't agree more, Carl. It's about awareness leading to action. We need to educate, organize, and resist the mechanisms of limbic capitalism.
I think we can stop there. The rest is just winding down. So that is something that I thought was interesting that they pointed out. There was parts that we thought that were missing. Do you remember what it was?
Yes. The fundamental reason or operating logic of capitalism is profit at all costs. Like profit is the bottom line. Drive toward that in a very amoral, psychopathic way in many cases. And when you don't change the incentive structure at its root, you're just going to be trying to regulate it, top down regulate it. It's just going to evolve and it'll find new ways to chase profit in other ways. So without critiquing the fundamental motive of the economy, it's just kind of a Band-Aid in many ways.
Yeah, and I think the thing they pointed out here is that even if we were, say the proletariat were to revolt and take control of the means of production, in this case, the algorithms that are doing what they're doing in limbic capitalism, those things still exist. The genie is out of the bottle and we can't undo them. And the best case scenario is that we use them to nudge people in more healthy ways of living and away from vices that are going to destroy us and our societies. And the thing is, even that isn't a very pretty picture. I mean, it's not that bad, but it's still going to be used in probably negative ways. And we can't avoid it. It exists, but it's almost like they're taking away choice to some degree. Like they kind of are. They're manipulating, they're putting thumbs on the scale. But we were talking about earlier, when isn't that the case? I guess I'm a determinist philosophically, and I think that's always been the case. We never have completely autonomous, outside of reality choices. We're always determined by the environment or our mental state at that time. So I don't know. I guess it'd be great if we could use that to nudge things in positive directions, away from gambling, towards working out and getting exercise and stuff like that.
And that's where the socialistic solution, that's the ideal of that if we have ownership of the means of production rather than it being a tiny ruling elite. He says it's not about who controls the means of production, it's who controls the dopamine.
Who controls the spice?
When we can all control the dopamine, we would hopefully make decisions that would benefit us because we control the dopamine. We want to nudge ourselves in healthier, more pro-social directions because we would all collectively think, okay, we want this for ourselves rather than kind of a ruling elite saying, how can we just extract from the masses and then just acquire more? That would be the ideal of the socialist solution there. Yeah.
I guess. Yeah, but my qualm is still with the fact that we've basically drugified socializing and using just things like we made things into these addictive forms to the point that it could be a new form of torture where you get somebody so hooked on something and then completely pull them out of it, put them in complete isolation after giving them like the highest highs. That I've never heard of that being done, but you give them luxury beyond compare, right, and then suddenly you put them in a solitary confinement for months. That is the comparison that we could end up. I don't know. This is a sticky path, and we can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. So I guess we just have to move forward the best way we can. Is there anything else you wanted to add? Is there any other points? I guess we'll have to bring it up later. Next episode, it seems like we're going to be doing a completely unrelated topic: making friends as an adult. I have to figure out how to make that into a single concept, but
or awesomeness.
No, we're doing it tomorrow. We're recording tomorrow, so I know we're not doing awesomeness.
I can't record tomorrow.
All right. Well, news to me and you, listener. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. Rate us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. We always forget to do this. Share us with your friends. If you think we're quality, we have, honestly, this is just a passion project. Is it a bit ironic that I'm asking people to promote this after this episode? I don't know. If you find this helpful, you find this interesting, please just take the 2 seconds to do it because we have so few reviews. And
you actually have more than you think.
We have some. I've cajoled people to do it, but they're all people I know. So like if you're a random person, please, by all means, you'll be doing us a great favor. It'll only take you 2 minutes. I know all podcasts basically say this, so feel free to ignore, but also we would appreciate it.
We should say this in a way that taps into the limbic system a little better.
You're right. You know what? You specifically, listener, if you give us a review, we will love you emotionally from a distance. Like you'll have our gushing love coming out of us from far away, supporting you in all your endeavors. You'll know that we are on your side like guardian angels.
That's better.
Thank you. Yeah.
More. I need more dopamine.
No. Once I sign up, then like the numbers start going up, then I'll add some more to it, I guess. I don't know.
Well, dopamine is the molecule of more, so it's never enough, apparently.
Yeah, it's not having what you want, it's wanting what you have.
There we go. That's the solution.
That's the end of that podcast. Yeah. Have a good day, everybody. Bye.
Do you do you have the audacity?
Steve, you still there? No, you quit and always you quit. Doesn't mean you quit.